If you love to fly 5-inch freestyle quads, then you're always looking for the best new 5-inch freestyle frame. Me too. And I've noticed a few 5-inch freestyle frames that have come out lately that I think are worthy of attention. So I'm going to start a series of videos where I look at these frames, assemble them, and just basically review them. And this is the first video in that series. And the frame that we're looking at today is the Flyfish RC Volador. The Volador is a really versatile frame. It can be ordered in either the X geometry, which people who are flying sort of pure freestyle are going to want to pick this one. The symmetrical arms give the most neutral and balanced handling between pitch and roll. But a downside of the X geometry is that, depending on what camera you use, you may be able to see the props in view, which some people don't like. The fix for that is to order it in the deadcat geometry. And the deadcat geometry basically moves the front arms down and back so that the props are not in view. This has a small effect on handling, but for people who are flying a little bit more smooth and cinematic, or even just light acro, you're probably not going to notice any difference. In addition, it can fit all of the common video transmitters. Of course, analog video transmitters will fit. They're not very big. And it can be ordered in a version for the O3 air unit as well. The only video transmitter, modern video transmitter that it doesn't fit is the original DJI air unit. You're going to have to pick a different frame if you fly those for some reason. The Volador has a lot of features that used to be found only on really premium, high-priced frames. Features like the CNC machined metal aluminum front end, or the T700 carbon. I don't have any way of verifying that this is really T700 carbon. We just have to take Flyfish's word on that. But T700 is a more premium, stronger type of carbon. It's also more expensive. But the price of the Volador only comes in at like $65, which that's hardly a premium price. So let's take a closer look at the Volador frame and some of the specific features of it that I think you're going to find interesting, and we'll just go through the assembly process and show you how it goes together. Here's what all comes in the box. We've got the frame parts themselves, top plate, mid plate, and bottom plate, 4 arms, the camera mount. We've got a bunch of screws, and I love the fact that the screws are all individually bagged and labeled. It's going to make it super easy to follow along with the assembly guidelines. The frame comes with some 3D printed parts, and we'll see how those go together as we do the assembly, and a pretty premium battery pad. Is it a sticky battery pad? No, it does not feel like a sticky, grippy battery pad. More about that later, but probably not going to end up using this. Speaking of things that are not sticky and grippy, the battery straps that are included are also not sticky and grippy. I absolutely insist that my battery straps be this kind of rubber-coated, grippy kind. Here's a couple examples of it. This is, in my mind, essential for keeping batteries from ejecting, and I simply don't use this standard kind of leather one. So we're not going to use those either. On the back side of the exploded diagram is this QR code, which takes you to Flyfish's Fresh Desk help site, and that's where we can find the assembly guide. That's fantastic. Let's take a look at the assembly guide and see how detailed it is. Oh, wonderful, wonderful. So here we've got an actual assembly order and instructions. Flyfish. I'd like to say that this should be like the bar, but frankly, this is above and beyond compared to what you get with a lot of frames today. So we're going to start the assembly process with the bottom plate, and the very first thing we're going to do is get this logo out of the bag. Get out of there. Get this little silicone logo out of the bag, and we're going to insert that into the bottom plate so it sits flush with the bottom plate like so. With the Flyfish logo facing you, we're going to get 4 12mm screws and put them in these 4 outer holes. Next, we're going to get 4 16mm screws and put them in the 4 screw holes adjacent to the 12s that we just put in. By the way, I love the fact that all of these screws seem to have had thread locker pre-applied from the factory. Again, this is a nice above and beyond step that really shows the Flyfish guys are thinking ahead. Next, we're going to flip this over without the screws coming out. So we'll just, okay, great. And we'll get the 4 arms. The arms are going to mount onto the screws. We've got 2 screw holes in each of the arms, and which way is up? The arms do not appear to be symmetrical, so we could put them on wrong. Let's just see how my intuition works for me. That's feeling correct. What would happen if I put this on here upside down? Oh, it wouldn't work at all. It would just be, no, there's no way. You really can't. It wouldn't be oriented right at all if I were to flip it over. Nice. So there shouldn't really be any way to get this wrong and still have your arms look like an X. Next, we're going to take the mid plate, and I want you to turn it so that these press nuts here are facing up. I'm really impressed with the fact that the press nuts on this frame have been countersunk so that they are flush with the carbon. On basically every frame I've seen to date, they just take the press nuts and they press them in, but the actual nut itself is sticking up above the carbon. This is extra work and extra complexity in the machining. Instead of just drilling a hole through the carbon, they have to actually sort of mill it out to make room for the press nut, and that's another sort of really nice premium step. Take a look at the frame on the bench and identify the 4 slits here that the camera side plates are going to go into, and turn the frame so that faces away from you. Then take the mid plate, and again with the press nuts facing up and the mid plate facing towards the back of the frame, we're going to align that with the 8 screws that we put in. It may take a little bit of wiggling of the arms to get that to, yeah, there we go. And what you're going to see is that it's going to fit down over the 4 longer screws and press up against the 4 shorter screws. Then we'll flip it over, and with an M2 driver, we will drive these 4 screws in. 2mm driver, not M2 driver, 2mm driver. Thanks to Phantom FPV for buying me this for Christmas like 2 years ago. It's amazing. Link in the video description if you want to pick one up yourself. But it's like $90. So like, get it for Christmas. Get someone to get it for you for Christmas. Next, we're going to get the bag of standoffs and take them out. And notice that there are some long standoffs and some short standoffs. We're going to be working with the long standoffs. For each of these standoffs, we're going to take the longer screw that is sticking through, and we're going to press it down so it is sort of flush with the carbon. And then we're going to take the standoff and line it up with the hex cutout in the carbon fiber plate. And then we're going to flip it over, and we're going to screw that screw in. And here's what we have when we're done. Next, we're going to take the antenna holder prints and slide them in between the mid plate and the bottom plate. Notice that there is a hollowed out side and a flush side of the antenna print. And I think the right way to do it is to slide it in like so, with the hollowed out side facing down. It seems like the mounting screws for the video transmitter will go up into these holes that you can see here, but they will pass through the bottom plate and not bind into it. So this would be easier to do if I had left these other screws a little bit looser, like the installation instructions told me to, but I'm a dummy and didn't do that. Still, it's TPU. It'll go. I said it'll go. I was wrong. It won't go. Damn it. Yeah, that pretty clearly lines up there. And we've got the mirror image one on the other side. Next, get the bag of M2 screws and get out the middle-sized ones, which are the 12mm screws. We only need 2 of them for the time being. And we're going to screw those screws into these 12mm holes through the TPU antenna holders that we put in. We're going to go back to the standoffs, and we're going to grab 2 of the shorter 20mm standoffs and set aside these remaining ones, one long and one short. And we're going to grab this bag of M2.5 screws, and we're going to get out 2 of the shorter 9mm M2.5 screws. Why M2.5? Flyfish, why M2.5? Why not just M2? Or like, really? How much weight did you save on this chonker of a frame by having 3 different sizes of screws instead of 2? What's your point here, Flyfish? Okay, anyway, enough bitching. We're going to put those through these 2 holes at the rear of the frame, and we're going to install the shorter 20mm standoff. Oh boy. Did it strip? It's threatening to strip. I'm not a fan of 1.5mm hardware on 5-inch quads. I mean, it makes sense on a micro quad where you have to use M2 screws because everything else is just too big. But like, if they had chosen to use M3 screws on this, then we would have a 2mm driver, and it would be a lot more durable and easier to find spares. Weird choice. Just a weird choice that they were just like, I'm designing a frame. Now reality can be whatever I want. And didn't think about sort of the usability and maintainability. Where am I going to get a 2.5mm standoff except to order a spare from Flyfish? Oh, well, that's fine. Little annoying. Okay. Moving on. Next, we're going to go back to this bag of M2.5 and M3 screws, and we're going to get out the 28mm M3 screws. We'll get out all 4 of them, and those are going to be our stack screws. Depending on whether you're using 30mm or 20mm ESC and flight controller, you're going to put these screws into either the outer or the inner 4 holes. It is really nice that these have press nuts on the other side. A lot of people believe that having the stack screws secured to the plate with nuts helps reduce vibrations that are transmitted to the flight controller stack. And many frame designs simply pass the screws through the holes and have them loose. And in that case, the frame builder, have to get a nut and put it on top, and that's just another step for you to put in. In this case, Flyfish have done it for you, and that is pretty awesome. Oh, I take it back. Only if you're using 30mm hardware. If you're using 20mm hardware, you have to put your own nut on. I guess they probably didn't have enough carbon to mill this out. Maybe they thought it would make it too weak. I don't know why they might have chosen not to do that, but fair enough. I'm going to get some M3 nuts and put them on here. Now I've got an assortment here of M3 hardware, including more M3 nuts than I'm probably ever going to use. If you're wondering where to get assorted hardware and other supplies like this, my website, fpvknowitall.com, is home of the ultimate FPV shopping list. And it has suggestions for, you're looking for a 5-inch freestyle build, a 5-inch frame, a 5-inch racing build, sub 250 gram, tiny whoop. It's got suggestions for quadcopter parts if you're trying to get that, but it's also got suggestions for hardware like miscellaneous screws, nuts, bolts, solder, wires. Basically, the goal of the website, I need this blue Loctite is making it hard to put this on. Basically, the goal of the site is to just basically make suggestions for whatever you're looking for in the world of FPV. There's a link in the video description, and if you haven't checked it out, you totally should. Next, take the 3D printed antenna mount, and with the antenna hole facing upward, press it down over the rear 2.5mm standoffs. The official build instructions next say to take these 3D printed pieces and put them over the remaining 4 standoffs. I don't really understand the purpose of this. I'm going to do it because they told me to, and I don't want to accidentally make some mistake. It's not clear to me which way they go, like if they have a specific orientation and purpose. They're sideways. The textured, so the exploded diagram shows this textured side facing sideways and the flat side facing front to back. Does it matter if no, they're completely... What's the point of this? I don't know. I guess we'll find out by the end. Is it just cosmetic? This 3D printed piece is the front bumper, and it's going to go on the sort of chin of the frame here at the front. This is a great way to improve the durability of the frame because, of course, the bottom front, the chin of the frame takes a lot of abuse. You crash going forward a lot, and that bottom piece is usually what takes the hit. So sometimes you'll find that just wears out, and you have to replace it because it's so worn out before the frame plate is even really fully broken. This 3D printed piece is basically going to be consumable. As it wears out, you can just get another one, 3D print another one, or buy it and put it on there. But the problem with a piece like this is that this is flexible TPU and it's squishy. And we're going to take these M3 by 10mm screws and we're going to put them up through here. And they're going to compress that TPU, and either they're going to be kind of loose and the standoff won't be fully tight, or you're going to tighten them down so much that they rip through the TPU, and then the TPU isn't going to be held on securely. It seems really nice here on the bench, but as soon as you start using it in the real world, it isn't great. The solution to this, in my opinion, is to have some kind of a well, they practically have them here, but this isn't where we're told to use them. These little sleeves right here, they can go into the TPU, and the screw can push up against the metal sleeve and then be fully tightened without the TPU getting squished or crushed. Next, we're going to get one of the CNC camera mounts. Note that there is a left and a right side one. They are not interchangeable. And we're going to get one of these little carbon pieces. They don't seem to have a name. We'll call them a camera plate, perhaps. And that carbon fiber camera plate is going to seat in to this cutout here, right here on the CNC metal piece. So it should just sit flush like so. And this is the left side, so it's going to go here. These two tabs are going to fit into those two slots, and this screw is going to go up into the screw hole here. And the milled out side is going to face out. I see why they've got this milled out now. The position of this standoff is essential because we need a flat face facing toward the camera plate, because this plate is going to press right up against it. This is something that the Apex does to improve the strength of their sort of camera boxed in front end. By having the plate press right up against the standoff, we get just a little bit of additional strength. I think the easiest way to assemble this is actually to put the carbon fiber plate in first and then the metal piece. I found it a little tricky to get it all. No, it's still going to be tricky. Dang, this 3D printed piece is kind of in the way. Was it really better to install them first? See if we can just get this screw started. And then we want to line up this tab here and have it go down in the... Yeah, and see how that screw is starting to crush the TPU? Over time, the TPU will wear out and it'll just rip out. You could at least put like an M3 washer on here, and it would help improve the longevity. It's a really nice front end, though. It's really kind of thoughtful how they've done it and goes together really nicely. The next step is to install this XT60, and I finally understand why they use 2.5mm standoffs and 2.5mm screws in the rear. The idea behind this bulkhead mounted XT60 is that it's going to be completely secured. It has these little cutouts, these hex-shaped cutouts in the rear, and it's going to just get put in here. It's going to slide right into the antenna, and it's going to mate with those standoffs. I guess we might need to loosen them and rotate them. No, the 3D print is holding them in place. That's beautiful. And that's going to press down there, and the reason that it's 2.5mm hardware is that's what these bulkhead mount XT60s have. I don't think it's lined up right. I think we need to rotate these just a little. We're going to need to loosen this and rotate them. Next, we're going to lay the top plate on top. If you have installed your XT60 facing the wrong way, this is the part where you will cuss and you'll have to take it off and do it again. The milled cutout goes up and the Volador branding goes up. If you're going to use the GoPro mount, this is the part where you'll get it out and install it. I personally hate this style of GoPro mount for freestyle because it will you'll smack the camera and the camera will change angle. It's flexible, and I guess it's okay that they've installed it, but I will never use it on a freestyle quad if I can. I'm gonna have to go online and look for 3D prints for the Volador to hold my camera at a fixed angle. And then we have two M2.5 by 9mm screws that we're going to use on these two holes by the XT60. It does look real nice. That's slick. I will give it to you. That's pretty slick. There's one more thing that came in the box that we haven't dealt with, and that is this hardware for mounting the DJI O3 Air unit. We've got some screws that are specifically designed. The O3 uses weird M1.6 screws. Who has those? And so this hardware here, these nuts and these standoff or the spacers, could be used if you're mounting the O3 Air unit in the rear. Any other video transmitter is going to use standard M2 hardware probably, and there are holes for that. So just to let you know that that's included. Next, I want to give you my final thoughts about this frame based on everything I've seen so far and anything I haven't covered yet. But before I do that, I want to take a second and remind you that I have a Patreon. Patreon is a website where you can subscribe to me for as little as $2 a month or more if you feel like I've earned it. The amount you subscribe at is totally up to you. Patrons get access to my Discord server, which is one of the best resources for getting help with, learning about, and just talking with other enthusiasts about FPV. It is a super friendly, positive, helpful environment full of knowledgeable people. People have told me I don't promote it enough, that it's like you just go there, you ask a question, you'll usually get an answer faster than if you asked me personally, and a lot of the time the answer will even be correct. But whether you join my Patreon because you want access to the Discord server or just because you've been watching my videos for a long time and you've finally decided today's the day that I earned your support, whatever your motivation, if today is that day, head on down. There's a link in the video description, patreon.com. Technically, it's a bit.ly link, I think. Anyway, there's a link down there. I would love to have you as a supporter. You can sign up at any dollar level that you think matches the value you get from my content, as little as $2 and up. You set the amount. You can stop whenever you want. This is a really good frame. There's one thing about this frame that I need to check before I sort of give it my seal of approval, but I'm really impressed with what they've done with this frame. I think this is going to be a hell of a good basher, and the design of the frame is such that it seems like it's going to do a pretty good job of protecting your electronics. It'll obviously depend on what specific electronics you have, how much they hang out the sides, but overall, it doesn't look like it's going to be too difficult to build. It looks fairly roomy. 23 millimeter spacing here, that's plenty. That's not generous, but it's plenty for a flight controller and ESC. Plenty of room in the back for any video transmitter you want, whether it's 20 or 25 millimeter mounting, and lots of room in the front with versatility for the camera mounting. It's weird because it's a complicated frame to build. There's like a lot of parts and a lot of screws, but it doesn't like piss me off and annoy me like some other frames I've built that I won't name, because the complexity, it still sort of makes sense to my brain after having built a bunch of quadcopters. There's nothing like, oh, we just completely reinvented the wheel just because we thought we wanted to. It's just like an evolution of designs that have come before it, and I'm pretty impressed with it, especially at a price of $65. But we have to weigh it. We have to weigh it. And the weight is, 194 grams. Woo! That's a deal breaker. That's a total deal breaker for me. My preferred frame to fly is 110 grams. It's almost half the weight, but it's not necessarily going to be a deal breaker for everybody, because some people want a heavier, less agile frame that's going to have more durability. And as far as I can tell, especially from some of the pilots who fly this thing is a real basher. If this is a good frame for you, then there are links down in the video description where you can buy it. They are affiliate links. It means a lot to me when you click those links because I get a small commission from the store. It's just your way of saying, hey, Bardwell sent me. So whether you're buying this frame or buying anything else, definitely head on down there and use those affiliate links in the video description to make your purchases. There are two places I think you might want to go from here. And the first one is a video that I made about heavy frames and heavy, durable frames versus lightweight, agile frames. In that video, I was specifically looking at the Rotor Riot tank, which only comes in at 180 grams. Hard to believe there's a frame out there that makes that one look light, but this is it. And it's got a lot more perspective on what you give up when you go with a frame like this. Obviously, you get durability, but what do you give up? I'm going to put a card on screen linking to that video. As well, I want to put a card on screen linking to my frame, the QAVS JB Edition, and you can see what you get when you go with something like a 110 gram frame. It's not as durable. How else is it different? I'll see you there.